A single book just broke the all-time record for the most expensive comic ever sold. It was the Nicolas Cage copy of Action Comics '1, the first appearance of Superman, and it just changed hands for $15 million. That's enough to buy an original Picasso, a 1962 Ferrari 250 GT, or a Gulfstream private jet. But the whole story is so much stranger than just one very big number. So buckle up. In the mid-90s, Nicolas Cage was cast in his dream role of Kal-El for Tim Burton's follow-up to the Batman films, Superman Lives. Cage decided he should have the best copy of the book he could find, so he purchased one that had recently surfaced at a Sotheby's auction in 1992. The book had sold at Sotheby's for a then record-setting price of $82,500, and he broke the record again when he bought it a few years later for $150,000. For better or worse, Nick Cage never got to play Superman, until he did, sort of, in Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and then again, even more sort of, in The Flash. But even though the Tim Burton film was scrapped, Cage still owned the most valuable comic book in existence, until, suddenly, he didn't. The comic vanished in 2000 during a party at the actor's house, and remained missing for over a decade. It was recovered through harrowing circumstances and eventually returned to Nick Cage, who then had it graded by CGC at 9.0 and sold at auction in 2011 for another record-breaking price of $2.2 million. That brings us to the present, and it has blown past the recent sale of Superman 1 at $9.1 million to take the record once again. Both the buyer and seller of this book remain anonymous, but we're going to hear from the man who was in the room where it happened every time this book has sold. Vincent Zurzolo of Metropolis Collectibles. Thanks for joining me, Vincent.
Thanks so much for having me. It is an incredible story, and we are so excited about this momentous occasion. This $15 million sale for Action Comics #1, CGC graded 9.0, tied for highest graded in the world, and stolen Nicolas Cage copy, eclipses and obliterates the previous sale, and I think it'll stand for quite some time.
So this specific copy of Action 1 is one of the most legendary single comics in existence. Can you walk me through a little bit of its history?
In 1992, at a Sotheby's auction, this comic book sold for $82,000. Then again, in 1996, my partner, CEO of Metropolis Collectibles and ComicConnect, Stephen Fischler, sold it to Nicolas Cage for $150,000. That was, again, a record. Nicolas Cage was our exclusive client, and we helped build one of the greatest collections ever assembled for comics. In the year 2000, he had a Christmas party at his home in Los Angeles, and he had his comic books on display, and unfortunately, someone stole his Action Comics 1, his Detective 27, and a Marvel Mystery comic as well. The Detective 27 is still out there in the ether. The Marvel Mystery 71 was actually sold on eBay, and we could not get law enforcement to pursue the case. It blows my mind away that they didn't pursue that. My partner went out to Los Angeles to help with the investigation, and while he was out there, he said to Nick, sooner or later somebody's going to try to sell this comic book, and when they do, we will recover it for you. Fast forward to 2011, our company gets a call from a gentleman on the West Coast saying he has an Action Comics #1. He wouldn't leave a number, but said he would call back. It was a very nerve-wracking few hours. He finally called back and then sent over an email with a picture of the Action 1. He told us that a client of his had found it in a storage locker in Los Angeles. My partner Stephen looked at the image and within 1 second recognized it as Nicolas Cage's stolen Action 1. He quickly got on the phone to Nick and told him the great news, and then got on the phone to the lead detective on the case. What was incredibly interesting is the same detective was still on the case, and so it was great continuity there. He knew what was going on. Steve flew out to Los Angeles the next day to meet up with the seller. He first went to the police precinct and met with the detective, and the detective said, when you know it's the book, just look over to me, I'll be your business partner, and then I'll introduce myself as to who I really am. He said, if anything goes wrong, if anybody pulls a gun or any violence happens, don't be a hero, just hit the floor, I'll take care of it. To which Steve replied, he said, no problem. So the next day they go to this industrial park in Simi Valley, and they meet up with Mark Bolello, who was one of the people who was on the show Storage Wars. Somebody had come to him and said they found this book, bought it in a storage locker. The gentleman was actually there as well. They look at the book. This gentleman thought he was getting $1 million for his comic book that day. That was the price that it was offered at. Stephen looked at the book and within 2 seconds said to the detective, "This is a really beautiful book." The detective says, "Allow me to introduce myself. Here's my business card." And you could see the color drain from the gentleman's face when he realized that this was a stolen comic book. What ends up happening after that is the book was retrieved. Nicolas Cage was ecstatic. And basically, we were able to then auction the comic book for Nick, and it sold then for what was a record $2.2 million. So the Nicolas Cage copy of Action Comics #1, 9.0, sells for $2.2 million and stayed in the collection of that buyer until now. Fast forward again to the year 2026. And we were able to negotiate fair terms between the seller and the buyer. What was amazing about it was this, the negotiation had to go back and forth a bit in order to structure the deal as well as the details behind it. When you're spending that type of money, there are certain things you want to make sure that are accurate and every I is dotted, every T is crossed. So we did all that and we were able to put this deal together. And what's really wonderful about it is not only were all three parties happy, the buyer, the seller, and us brokering the deal, but we all share a passion and love of comic books.
My first question is, which role is Nicolas Cage going to play when they make this into a movie?
I think the world of Nick Cage as an actor and a collector. I hope that he's happy about seeing this happen. I mean, of course, there's always going to be regret. Why didn't I hold it longer? But I mean, when he sold this, he sold it for what was then a world record. And to see his name will go down in history, not only for movies, but as the most famous comic book in the world, in the history of comic book collecting. This comic book is similar to the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa was a great Da Vinci painting, but it only became a worldwide phenomenon and so highly acclaimed after it was stolen and spent 2 years under the thief's bed. This comic book, I believe, stands on its own as the holy grail of comic books. I believe it stands on its own as the most important comic book, the first superhero, the origins and beginnings of the Man of Steel. But beyond that, the aspect of it being stolen and then recovered by our company and brought to market again and then brought to market again, I think adds a certain cachet to it.
And I think at this point, even the Mona Lisa would get a purple label of death, whereas this is blue label, unrestored.
Yeah, well, let's see when the Action Comics one is as old as the Mona Lisa.
It may need some conservation. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you about the grading process. Now, when it was taken in 2000, CGC was in its infancy, so it was not yet graded at that point. Is that correct?
Right. When we recovered it, the photo we got was in a folder, like a manila, not a manila folder that you would unwind and open, but just like a folder you put some files into. And so we got it graded so that we could bring it to market in a way that would instill confidence in bidders. People obviously feel more comfortable if a comic book is third-party graded, especially by CGC. So we did that and we brought it to market. And then recently I got it reholdered so that it could have the denotation of being from the Nicolas Cage collection.
Nice.
So that was really important to the buyer. I did not predict this one. I thought we had a chance if this book ever became available. And the timing was right, and I think there's a lot of beautiful and big things that are going to happen for comic books and all collectibles in 2026. We have started off the year gangbusters. It's not just this sale. I closed other 7 and 6 high six-figure and mid six-figure deals in the last week and a half. So it's not just this book. A great question that was asked to me recently was, do I see a trickle-down effect from this Action Comics sale? Does this affect the comic books that sell for $10, $20, $50, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands? And here's the way I'd answer that. I'm not sure it directly means that all Golden Age comic book keys go up in value. I don't think that happens. But what I do think happens is this adds an incredible amount of excitement to the hobby, instills a level of confidence in buyers around the world.
I want to ask you about the Edgar Church copy that is known to exist, but we haven't seen it in decades, right?
Yeah, the Mile High copy is a gorgeous copy, and it is privately owned, and the owner is not selling it. It will be passed down from generation to generation. There's no desire or need for money. There's no desire to sell it, and that's the word I have. And that's been the case for the last, I guess since he's owned it.
So it's off the table. And that leaves the Nicolas Cage copy as the top of the mountain for the market anyway, right?
Absolutely. There's two 9.0s. They're both gorgeous copies. We sold both of them. The other one is not for sale.
So you were involved in the 2014, the guy in Federal Way who sold the 9.0.
My company purchased that on eBay. Okay. For $3.2 million.
That is great. Thanks so much, Vincent.
My pleasure. Hey, would you mind if I just said one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to thank everybody out there who over the last 3 days has reached out to us with congratulatory texts, emails, phone calls, customers, colleagues, fellow dealers. Thank you all for the kind words, for the support. I'll never forget, I was the kid selling dollar comic books at conventions, and I don't take this for granted and really appreciate all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.